When Rodrigo Almeida, a 48-year-old entrepreneur with a fortune of 20 million reais in Sao Paulo, came home that Thursday afternoon, he found his 6-year-old daughter clinging desperately to the legs of Conceição Santos. The 44-year-old cleaning lady had been working in his villa in Morumbi for 3 years. He never imagined that in a few minutes he would discover the true face of the woman he had married years ago. As a man who had built a construction empire from scratch, he had always prided himself on treating all his employees with dignity and respect. Yet he had been so blind that he failed to notice that his second wife was making his own home a living hell for his little daughter. And why Conceição, a simple woman from the interior of Minas Gerais, who earned only 2,800 a month cleaning the 800 Messrs. Villa, would become the heroine who not only saved his daughter's life, but also his marriage, which he thought was perfect. This is the story of Rodrigo Almeida, the millionaire from Sao Paulo, who discovered that the greatest treasure in his house was not the Portnoy paintings on the walls or the imported cars in the garage, but a courageous cleaning lady who risked everything to protect a defenseless child, proving that a person's true value is not measured by what they own, but by what they are willing to sacrifice for others. In just 48 hours, Conceição Santos would go from being an invisible employee to the most important woman in Rodrigo's life, transforming a broken family into something he had never had before, a real home. Rodrigo Almeida was not born a millionaire, but the son of a bricklayer from Osasco and a seamstress who worked from home. At the age of 19, he built his first house with his own hands, sold it for $50,000, and invested the money in a second construction project. By the age of 30, he already had a small construction company. At 40, he was the owner of Almeida Construções, one of the largest companies in the industry in São Paulo, responsible for luxury residential buildings in upscale neighborhoods such as Vila Madalena, Itaim, Bibi, and Jardins. His first marriage to Helena lasted 12 years and gave him the greatest gift of his life. Isabella, a girl with big brown eyes and a shy smile, became his reason for living. When Helena died in a car accident 3 years ago, Rodrigo thought he would never be happy again. Then he met Valeria Montero at a business party at the Copacabana Palace during a trip to Rio de Janeiro. She was 35 years old. She had a degree in business administration from PUC Rio. She worked as a marketing manager for a cosmetics company. She had an apartment in Ipanema and wore designer clothes that cost more than Conceição earned in 6 months. Valeria was everything Helena was not: ambitious, sophisticated, always mindful of her appearance. Rodrigo was impressed by her self-confidence, her way of talking about business, her clothes, and her demeanor at social events. After 6 months of a long-distance relationship between Sao Paulo and Rio, he proposed to her. Valeria accepted immediately, quit her job in Rio, and moved into the villa in Morumbi. At first, everything seemed perfect. Valeria redesigned the interior of the house, replaced furniture, hired a landscaping company to redesign the garden, and organized dinners for Rodrigo's important clients. She seemed to get along well with Isabella. She took the girl shopping at the mall, bought her expensive clothes, and enrolled her in ballet and piano lessons. Rodrigo was touched to see that his daughter had a mother figure again. What he didn't know was that Valeria was a completely different person when he wasn't home. Conceição Santos came into the Almeida family's life a few months after Rodrigo and Valeria's wedding. Born on a small farm near Três Corações in Minas Gerais, she had lost her husband in a construction accident when she was only 28 years old and was left alone with 2 children. Lucas, now 19, was studying civil engineering at the Federal University of Minas Gerais on a scholarship, and Mariana, 16, dreamed of studying medicine but needed money to pay for a preparatory course for the entrance exam. Conceição came to São Paulo and left her children with her mother, 68-year-old Dona Maria, who cultivated a small vegetable garden and raised chickens to supplement the family income. With her salary as a cleaning lady in Sao Paulo, Conceição was able to send $500 per month home. She paid $800 in rent for a room in a back house in Vila Madalena and still had some money left over for her basic expenses. She got up at 5 a.m. every day. She took 3 modes of transportation to arrive punctually at 7 a.m. at the Almeida family's villa. She worked until 5 p.m. and then returned home, where she studied Portuguese and basic mathematics using second-hand books she had bought at the CEO. She dreamed of one day finishing high school, which she had dropped out of at the age of 16 when she became pregnant with Lucas. Conceição was a 5'5" woman with brown hair, which she always tied back in a simple bun, and hands calloused from work. But she had a gift for transforming any environment she entered. She not only cleaned the house, organized things to make everyone's life easier, cared for the plants as if they were her children, cooked delicious dishes from Minas Gerais on the days when the cook was off, and had endless patience with Isabella, who clung to her from day one in a way that neither Rodrigo nor Valeria could understand. Isabella was a shy, insensitive child who still missed her mother very much. When Conceição arrived, the girl found in her something she had been missing: genuine, selfless affection. Conceição had a habit of talking to Isabella while she tidied her room. She told stories about the farm where she grew up, taught the girl how to braid her hair, and always had time to listen to the child's fears and dreams. Isabella began to eagerly await the weekdays when Conceição was at home, and was sad on weekends because the housekeeper wasn't working. Rodrigo noticed this connection and was happy that Isabella had found a loving female role model. What he didn't know was that Conceição had practically become his daughter's most important emotional attachment. When he was away, Valeria treated Isabella with a coldness that bordered on cruelty. Valeria saw the girl as an obstacle, a constant reminder that Rodrigo had had a life before her, a first wife whom he still remembered fondly. She would never physically harm Isabella in front of Rodrigo, but she developed subtle ways of tormenting the child psychologically. When Rodrigo was away on business, which happened at least twice a month, Valeria forbade Isabella from playing in the living room, forced the girl to remain locked in her room for hours, refused to give her food that the child liked, and threw tantrums over insignificant things, such as when Isabella knocked over a glass of water or made noise while playing. Isabella learned to walk on tiptoes in her own house, to whisper when she wanted something, and to run into Conceição's arms when Valeria yelled at her. Conceição noticed all this, but she was in a very delicate situation. She desperately needed this job to feed her children and help her elderly mother. If she told Rodrigo what was going on, she would risk Valeria making up a story and getting her fired. So Conceição decided to do what she could: protect Isabella when she was present, give the child extra affection and attention, and pray every day that Rodrigo himself would notice that something was wrong. What Conceição didn't know was that Isabella had nightmares almost every night. She woke up crying, calling for her deceased mother, and had developed a pathological fear of being alone with Valeria. The girl had lost her appetite. Her grades at the international school she attended began to decline, and the school psychologist had already requested a meeting with her parents to discuss the child's behavioral changes. Rodrigo scheduled the meeting for the following Friday, unaware that his whole life would change forever on Thursday afternoon. That Thursday morning, Rodrigo woke up feeling particularly happy. His company had won a multi-million-dollar tender to build a residential complex in Barra, a project that would earn him more than 50 million reais in profits over the next 2 years. He decided to leave the office early to tell Valeria the news and spend more time with Isabella. He stopped at a jeweler's in Moema and bought an $80,000 diamond necklace as a gift for his wife. And in a toy store, he bought a $500 doll that Isabella had been asking for weeks. It was exactly 3 p.m. when Rodrigo parked his silver Mercedes-Benz in the garage of his house. He took the gifts from the passenger seat and walked to the main entrance of the villa, whistling a tune he had heard on the radio. As he approached the door, he heard loud voices coming from inside the house. One of the voices clearly belonged to Valeria, who seemed to be yelling at someone. The other voice, quieter and shakier, he recognized as Conceição's. And then there was a third, thin, desperate voice that made his heart race. It was Isabella crying. Rodrigo dropped the bags on the floor and ran toward the screams coming from the living room. What he saw when he entered the room was a scene that would be burned into his memory forever. Valeria stood in the middle of the room wearing expensive sportswear, her face red with rage, pointing an accusing finger at Conceição, who was leaning against the wall with 2 suitcases in her hands, tears running down her face. Isabella, her little daughter, clung desperately to Conceição's waist, sobbing uncontrollably and screaming, "Don't let her go! Don't let her go! I already told you that you're fired!" Valeria yelled at Conceição with an expression of hatred that Rodrigo had never seen on his wife's face before. Take your dirty things and get out of my house right now and let go of that child. You have no right to touch her. Conceição was visibly frightened, but she did not let go of Isabella, who clung to her as if she were her only lifeline in the midst of a shipwreck. Please, Mrs. Valeria, at least let me say goodbye to Isabella properly. You don't have to pay me anything. I just want you to stop talking to this child. Valeria lunged at Conceição and tried to pull Isabella from the housekeeper's arms. Let her go immediately. Then Conceição did something that surprised even herself. Instead of letting go of Isabella, she stood between the child and Valeria and used her own body as a shield. You will not harm this girl, she said in a quiet but firm voice, looking Valeria straight in the eye for the first time in 3 years. I will not allow it. Valeria became angry. How dare you challenge me? You're an employee, a nobody. I'll call the police and say you're kidnapping my granddaughter. Isabella screamed even louder. She's not my mother. I want you, Conceição. I want you, Conceição. At that moment, Rodrigo entered the room. The sound of his footsteps made the three of them turn around at once. Valeria turned pale. Conceição lowered her gaze in shame. Isabella ran to her father, still sobbing. What's going on here? Rodrigo asked in a quiet, controlled voice, lifting Isabella up. His gaze shifted from Valeria to Conceição as he tried to understand the situation. Valeria quickly changed her expression and spoke in a dramatic voice. Rodrigo, thank God you're here. This woman behaved completely inappropriately toward Isabella. She turned the girl against me and made the child disobey me. And when I said I would fire her, she refused to leave and began to manipulate Isabella into defending her. I was just trying to protect our daughter from a negative influence. Rodrigo looked at Conceição, who was still holding the 2 suitcases and visibly trembling. Conceição, is that true? Conceição hesitated. She knew that as a cleaning lady, her word would never carry more weight than that of her boss's wife. But when she looked at Isabella, who was looking up from her father's knees with pleading eyes, she made a decision that would change everything. No, Mr. Rodrigo, she said, lifting her chin and looking him straight in the eye. That's not true. Valeria stepped forward. Rodrigo, do you believe an uneducated domestic worker more than your own wife? But Rodrigo was paying attention to other details. Isabella clung to his neck with a force he had never felt before, as if she were afraid that someone would tear her from his arms. The girl's eyes were red and swollen from crying, and she was shivering as if she were cold, even though it was 82 degrees on that hot afternoon. Conceição, a woman he had always known to be calm and respectful, had a look of determination on her face that seemed new. Conceição, Rodrigo said calmly, tell me exactly what happened. Conceição took a deep breath. She knew she was risking everything, but she could no longer remain silent. Senra Rodrigo, Donna Valeria has locked Isabella in her room since yesterday evening because the girl spilled juice on the table in the living room. She didn't give the child dinner yesterday or breakfast today. When I came this morning and saw Isabella crying from hunger, I secretly gave her a piece of bread and milk in the kitchen. Mrs. Valeria found out and said I was disregarding her authority. Valeria exploded. That's a lie, Rodrigo. That woman makes up stories to get revenge because I discovered she was stealing food from our kitchen. I have never stolen anything from your house, Conceição said with dignity. In the 3 years I have been working here, I have never taken a single piece of sugar that was not offered to me. But I couldn't stand by and watch a 6-year-old child go hungry in her own home. Rodrigo felt a shiver run down his spine. He lifted Isabella up and knelt down to her level, cupping her little face in his hands. Isabella, my daughter, tell me what happened. Daddy needs to know the truth. Isabella looked at Valeria, who was glaring at her menacingly, then at Conceição, who was encouraging her, and finally at her father. Daddy, I was very hungry. Aunt Valeria said that naughty girls don't deserve to eat. She said that if I told you, she would send Aunt Conceição away and lock me in the dark room where the monsters live. Rodrigo felt the world spinning around him. What dark room, Isabella? The room with the old stuff upstairs, Dad. Aunt Valeria said that the monsters that live there eat disobedient girls. Rodrigo knew that room. It was a storage room on the 3rd floor, where old furniture and boxes of documents were kept. There were no windows, just a dim lamp on the ceiling. And it really was a place that could scare any child. He would never have thought that anyone could use this place to terrorize his daughter. Valeria, he said, standing up and looking at his wife. Is that true? Valeria realized she was losing control of the situation. Rodrigo, you don't believe the fantasies of a 6-year-old and the lies of an employee, do you? Isabella has a very vivid imagination, you know that. And this woman is clearly trying to break us up because she's jealous of our life. But Rodrigo remembered other things. The moments when he came home and found Isabella strangely quiet. The nights when his daughter woke up crying and he thought it was just normal childhood nightmares. The way Isabella always ran to Conceição when he came home from work, as if the cleaning lady were her protection from something. Isabella, he said gently, has Aunt Valeria done other things that made you sad when Daddy wasn't home? Isabella hesitated. Conceição looked at Valeria again, knelt down next to Rodrigo, and took the little girl's hand. You can tell me, sweetheart. No one will hurt you. I promise. And then Isabella began to talk. She told him how she sometimes didn't get anything to eat when Rodrigo was away on business, how she was locked in her room for hours when Valeria had friends over, about the shouting and insults when she made noise while playing, about the times Valeria told her she was an annoying child and her father would be happier if she didn't exist, about how she had to learn not to cry when she missed her mother because Valeria said that crybabies ended up in orphanages. With every word Isabella spoke, Rodrigo felt a mixture of anger and guilt he had never experienced before. How could he have been so blind? How could he not have noticed that his own daughter was suffering at home while he was working to give them a better life? When Isabella had finished speaking, the silence in the room was deafening. Valeria was pale and clearly realized that her version of events had collapsed. Conceição cried quietly, still holding Isabella's hand. Valeria, Rodrigo said in a voice he didn't recognize. You abused my daughter, Rodrigo. That's not entirely true. Valeria tried to defend herself, but her voice sounded weak and unconvincing. You terrorized a 6-year-old child who had already lost her mother. You starved my daughter. You made her afraid of her own home. Rodrigo approached Valeria and she instinctively backed away. You did that because you knew I wasn't there to protect her. I was just trying to educate Isabella so she would be a better child. Valeria tried to argue. Raising a child does not involve psychological torture. Rodrigo exploded and completely lost his temper. What kind of person threatens a child with monsters? What kind of woman denies a 6-year-old girl food? Valeria realized that she had completely lost control of the situation. Rodrigo, you're overreacting. Isabella is fine, isn't she? She's healthy, she has everything she needs. She's traumatized. Rodrigo shouted, my daughter is traumatized because I brought a cruel person into my house and couldn't protect her. Then he turned to Conceição, who was still kneeling next to Isabella. Conceição, did you know about this? Conceição nodded and wiped the tears from her face. Yes, Mr. Rodrigo, I knew about it. Why didn't you tell me? Conceição took a deep breath before answering. Because I'm just a cleaning lady, Mr. Rodrigo. Who would believe my word over your wife's? I desperately needed this job. My children depend on the money I send to Minas Gerais. My mother is sick and needs expensive medication. I couldn't risk losing this job, but I couldn't abandon Isabella either. So I did what I could. I tried to protect her when I was there, gave her affection when Mrs. Valeria wasn't looking, and prayed that you would find out for yourself what was going on. Rodrigo felt great respect for this woman who had put her daughter's emotional security above her own financial security. Why did you do that? Why did you care so much about Isabella? Conceição smiled for the first time that afternoon, a sad but sincere smile. Because Isabella reminds me of my Mariana when she was little. Because every child deserves to feel loved and protected. And why? Because after I lost my husband, I found a reason to go on living by taking care of children. Isabella is a special girl, Senor Rodrigo. She has a pure heart and a beautiful soul. She deserves to be happy. Isabella let go of her father's hand and ran into Conceição's arms. Aunt Conceição, you're not going away, are you? Rodrigo looked at Valeria, who was leaning against the wall with a dejected expression on her face. Conceição isn't going anywhere, he said. You're the one who's leaving, Valeria. Valeria looked up in surprise. Rodrigo, you can't be serious. We're married. I married someone who doesn't exist. Rodrigo replied coolly. I married someone I thought loved my daughter. I married someone I believed had a good heart. The woman I saw today tormenting a defenseless child is not the person I wanted to share my life with. Valeria made one last attempt. Rodrigo, think about what you're doing. We have a life together. We have plans. We have a standard of living that I've grown accustomed to. You can't just throw me away because of a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Rodrigo repeated incredulously. "You call torturing my daughter a misunderstanding? I never physically hurt Isabella." Valeria protested. "You hurt her in a much worse way. You hurt her soul, and that is unforgivable." Rodrigo turned to Conceição. "Conceição, can you stay with Isabella today? I need to sort a few things out." Conceição nodded immediately. "Of course, Senor Rodrigo, I'll take care of her. You'll stay in the guest room. Starting today, your duties have changed. You are no longer just a cleaning lady. You are Isabella's housekeeper, and your main task is to make sure she feels safe and loved in this house." Conceição's eyes filled with tears again. "Senor Rodrigo, I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me," said Rodrigo. "I'm the one who owes you an apology. I'm sorry I didn't realize what was going on. I'm sorry for letting my daughter suffer. I'm sorry it took me so long to realize that you are the true heroine of this story." Valeria realized she had lost the battle completely. "Rodrigo, if you throw me out now, I'll tell everyone that you chose a domestic worker over your own wife. It will be a scandal in your social circles." Rodrigo laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. "Do you think I care what people think? Do you think my social reputation is more important to me than my daughter's well-being? If so, then you know me even less than I thought." He approached Valeria and spoke in a quiet but firm voice. "You have 1 hour to pack your things and leave my house. Tomorrow morning, my lawyer will contact you to discuss the divorce. I will be fair in the division of assets because, unlike you, I have character, but I never want to see you near my daughter again." Valeria tried to argue, but the look on Rodrigo's face made it clear that there was nothing more to discuss. She went upstairs to her room and packed her suitcases in silence, while Conceição stayed with Isabella in the living room. An hour later, she left the villa in Morumbi, never to return. That evening, after Isabella had eaten dinner for the first time in 2 days and fallen asleep with the new doll her father had bought her in her arms, Rodrigo and Conceição talked late into the night in the kitchen. Rodrigo wanted to understand exactly what had happened during all those months when he had been blind to his own daughter's suffering. Conceição told stories that broke Rodrigo's heart, about how Isabella cried hidden in the bathroom so Valeria couldn't hear her, how the girl had stopped playing with the expensive toys Valeria had bought her and instead preferred to paint sad pictures of a lonely little girl, how Isabella had constant nightmares and woke up crying for her dead mother, but couldn't find comfort in Valeria, who was annoyed by such weakness. "Isabella is a very intelligent and sensitive child," Conceição explained. "She realized that Donna Valeria didn't like her, but she didn't understand why. Children always think it's their fault when an adult treats them badly. She began to believe that she was a bad girl who deserved to be punished." Rodrigo cried that night for the first time since Helena's funeral. He cried out of guilt, anger, relief, and gratitude for the extraordinary woman who had protected his daughter when he had failed to do so. "Conceição," he said when he had his emotions under control, "I want you to know that from today, you are part of this family. Not as an employee, but as someone I respect and trust completely. Your salary will be about $8,000 per month. You are entitled to comprehensive health insurance for yourself and your children. Your vacation will be paid for, and I will finance your children's education until they graduate." Conceição was speechless. $8,000 per month was almost 3 times what she earned as a housekeeper. Health insurance meant that her mother could have the tests she had been putting off for years due to lack of money. And the promise to pay for Lucas and Mariana's education was more than she had ever dreamed of in her entire life. "Mr. Rodrigo, that is very generous, but it's not possible." Rodrigo interrupted her. "You saved my daughter. You risked your job and your financial security to protect a child. You have shown Isabella more love in 3 years than my own wife has in 2. That is priceless." But what Rodrigo didn't know was that the story was just beginning. When he came home from work 3 days later, he found Isabella playing in the garden with Conceição, who was teaching the girl how to plant sunflower seeds. It was the first time in months that he had seen his daughter truly laugh, with that carefree, joyful laugh that had disappeared since Valeria had entered their lives. "Daddy!" Isabella ran to him, covered in dirt but beaming with happiness. "Aunt Conceição is teaching me how to plant a vegetable garden. She said that when the sunflowers grow up, they'll be taller than me." Rodrigo lifted his daughter up, not caring about the dirt that had stained his $300 suit. Really? Are you going to plant anything else? We're going to plant tomatoes and cherry tomatoes so I can eat them after school, and basil so Aunt Conceição can make that delicious sauce she made for dinner yesterday. Rodrigo looked at Conceição, who had dirty hands, and smiled. She had changed out of her formal uniform and into simple, comfortable clothes, and looked very different from the tense and frightened woman he had met 3 days earlier. "How was your day?" he asked. "It was the best day of my life," Isabella replied before Conceição could say anything. Aunt Conceição let me help her with lunch, taught me how to fold my doll's clothes, and in the afternoon we watched that movie about the princess that Mama likes so much. Rodrigo felt a tug in his chest. For the first time in over a year, Isabella had mentioned Helena, her first mother, without crying or seeming sad. Conceição had achieved something that neither he nor the school psychologist had been able to do. She had helped Isabella talk about Helena in a natural and loving way. Aunt Conceição told me stories about my mom. Isabella continued. She said that Mom is in heaven watching over me and that she is happy when she sees me playing and laughing. Rodrigo looked questioningly at Conceição, who explained gently. "I found some photos of Mrs. Helena in the office when I was sorting through the papers that Mrs. Valeria had scattered around. I showed them to Isabella, and we talked about how beautiful her mother was and that she must have been a special person. I thought it was important for her to be able to talk about her mother without feeling guilty or sad." That evening, after Isabella had gone to bed, Rodrigo asked Conceição to come and talk to him again. He had spent the last 3 days observing the incredible transformation in his daughter and wanted to understand better who this woman really was, who had become so important in her life. "Conceição," he began, "I've noticed that you have a very special way with Isabella. Where did you learn so much about childcare?" Conceição smiled shyly. "Actually, Mr. Rodrigo, before I came to Sao Paulo, I worked as an assistant in a daycare center in Três Corações. I didn't have a degree, but the director hired me because I was good with children and willing to learn. I worked there for 5 years, caring for children between the ages of 2 and 6. Rodrigo was surprised. "You never told me that." "You never asked me about my past life," she replied without resentment. "And when I came to Sao Paulo, the only jobs I could find were as a cleaner or domestic worker. I had no references here in the field of childcare, so I took the job that was available." "Why did you leave the daycare center?" Conceição's face became sad. "When my husband died, I had a lot of debt. The salary at the Três Corações daycare center was very low, and I couldn't feed my 2 children or help my mother. A friend told me that I could earn 3 times as much in Sao Paulo, even as a domestic worker. It was a very difficult decision because I loved working with children, but I needed the money." Rodrigo began to understand that Conceição had much more to offer than he had thought. "Do you miss working with children every day?" she admitted. "But when I started taking care of Isabella, I felt like I was doing what I really love again. Every child is unique, and Isabella is very special. She is intelligent, creative, and sensitive. She just needed someone to make her feel safe so she could show who she really is. And what do you think Isabella needs now?" Conceição thought for a moment before answering. "She needs to regain her self-confidence. Donna Valeria convinced her that she was a bad, annoying child who bothered other people. That's not true, but she'll need time to understand that. She also needs routine, clear but loving rules, lots of affection, and the certainty that no one will ever hurt her again. Do you think you can help Isabella overcome this trauma?" "I believe so, Mr. Rodrigo, but it will take patience and a lot of love. And I'll need your help too. Isabella loves you more than anything else in the world, but she needs to feel that you will always protect her." Rodrigo felt that mixture of guilt and admiration for Conceição again. "You're right, I talked to her, but it will never happen again." The following week, Rodrigo did something that surprised all his employees. He completely changed his work routine. Instead of working from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., as he had done before, he now came to the office at 9 a.m. and left at 5 p.m. to have breakfast with Isabella and be there for dinner. He delegated more responsibility to his managers and now worked from home 2 afternoons a week. The change wasn't easy for a workaholic like him, but seeing the joy on Isabella's face when he came home early was worth every professional sacrifice. He also found that spending time with his daughter and watching Conceição at work was a transformative experience. Conceição had a parenting philosophy that was different from anything Rodrigo had seen before. She didn't yell, punish, or threaten. Instead, she talked to Isabella as if she were a person deserving of respect, explained the consequences of her actions, and always offered her choices. When Isabella did something wrong, Conceição helped her understand why it was wrong and how she could do better next time. Children learn by example. Conceição explained to Rodrigo one evening, when you treat a child with respect, they learn to respect others. When you are patient with them, they learn to be patient. When you show them that they are loved even when they make mistakes, they learn that love is unconditional. Rodrigo was impressed with the results. In just 2 weeks, Isabella had become a completely different child. She talked more, went out more, asked questions about everything, and showed curiosity about the world around her. The nightmares had almost disappeared. She was eating well again, and her school grades improved dramatically. But what impressed Rodrigo most was the way Conceição had changed the atmosphere throughout the house. She sang while she worked, always had a kind word for all the other employees, and had created a feeling of home that the villa had never had before. It was as if her cheerful and loving nature had dispelled all the attention and coldness that Valeria had brought to the space. When Rodrigo came home early one afternoon, he found Conceição in the library, where she was teaching Isabella to read a storybook. The girl was sitting on Conceição's lap, and the two were so engrossed in reading that they hadn't noticed him. Once upon a time, there was a princess who lived in a very beautiful castle. Isabella read slowly, pointing to each word with her finger, but she was very sad because she had no one to play with. Very good, my dear, Conceição praised her. You're reading better and better. Now tell me, why do you think the princess was sad? Isabella thought for a moment. What good are beautiful things? It's no use if you don't have anyone who really loves you. Conceição smiled and kissed Isabella on the forehead. Exactly. You're very smart. The most important people in our lives aren't the ones with the most money or the most beautiful things. They're the ones who love us and care for us. Rodrigo felt his eyes fill with tears. Conceição taught her daughter values that no expensive school could impart, and she did so with so much love and patience that it was impossible not to be moved. That evening, after Isabella had gone to bed, Rodrigo made a decision that would change everything again. He asked Conceição to come to his office for a talk and made her an offer she would never have expected. Conceição, he began, I have a proposal for you, but I want you to think about it carefully before you answer. Conceição sat down somewhat nervously in the chair in front of his desk. Speak, Mr. Rodrigo. I want you to go back to school. Conceição was confused. What do you mean, Mr. Rodrigo? I want you to finish high school and then study education. I will pay for everything. Tuition, books, school supplies, everything. And you will continue to receive your normal salary while you study. Conceição was speechless for a few seconds. Mr. Rodrigo, I don't understand why you would do that. Because you have a natural talent for teaching that should not be wasted. Because you changed my daughter in just 2 weeks. Because you deserve the chance to do what you truly love. And why? He hesitated, but then decided to be completely honest. Because I want you to be responsible for Isabel's education, not just as a housekeeper, but as her official teacher. Conceição was visibly moved, but also concerned. Mr. Rodrigo, that is very generous, but I don't know if I could study. I stopped going to school over 25 years ago. I've forgotten a lot. You are one of the most intelligent people I know, Rodrigo said with conviction. You may not have a degree, but you have wisdom, experience, and an ability to learn that many people with college degrees don't have. Besides, you wouldn't be doing it alone. I'll hire a private tutor. And Isabella? Isabella will continue to go to school in the mornings and take private lessons from you in the afternoons. While you're studying, I'll take care of her. Or we can hire a babysitter for the times when neither of us can be there. Conceição was visibly moved. Mr. Rodrigo, I don't know what to say. Tell her to accept. Say that you will realize your dream of working in education. Say that you will help me give Isabella the best education she can have. Conceição cried. She cried with joy, gratitude, and relief. She cried because, For the first time in her adult life, someone believed in her potential and offered her a real chance to develop. I accept, she said through her tears. I accept and promise that I will do my best. I know that. Rodrigo smiled. And one more thing. I want you to bring your children to Sao Paulo. Conceição raised her head in surprise. What do you mean? Lucas and Mariana, I want them to move here. The house is big, there are enough rooms. Lucas can continue studying engineering at USP, which is even better than UFMG. Mariana can attend high school at one of the best private schools in Sao Paulo and prepare for the medical school entrance exam. And your mother can come too, if she wants. Conceição trembled with excitement. Mr. Rodrigo, this is too much. You hardly know my children. I know their mother. Rodrigo interrupted her. That's enough for me. Each of your children must be an extraordinary person. That evening, Conceição called 3 Hearts and delivered the happiest news of their lives to her children and her mother. Lucas cried on the phone when he learned he could study at USP. Mariana screamed with joy when she learned she could prepare for medical school in Sao Paulo. Donna Maria, 68, said she was too old to move to another city, but she blessed her daughter's decision, and she would be very proud if she could see the family grow. 2 weeks later, Lucas and Mariana arrived in Sao Paulo. Rodrigo picked them up from the airport in person, along with Isabella and Conceição. When the 19-year-old boy, tall and dark-skinned like his mother, and the 16-year-old girl, delicate and with the same kind eyes as Conceição, left the arrivals hall, Isabella ran toward them as if they were long-awaited relatives. Are you Lucas and Mariana? She asked, hugging them both. Aunt Conceição has told me so much about you that I feel like I've known you for a long time. Lucas and Mariana were thrilled with Isabella, and within minutes the 3 were chatting like old friends. In the car on the way home, Lucas thanked Rodrigo with a politeness and maturity that impressed the entrepreneur. Mr. Rodrigo, I don't know how to thank you for this opportunity. My mother told me everything you've done for her and our family. I promise you that I will study hard and never disappoint you. You don't owe me anything. Rodrigo replied, Your mother saved my daughter. I am the one who owes your family a debt of gratitude. Mariana, who was shyer than her brother, whispered, Mr. Rodrigo, is it true that you will help me get accepted into medical school? Not just help, Rodrigo smiled and looked in the rearview mirror. I will make sure you have the best possible conditions to make this dream come true. The Santos family's adjustment to life in Sao Paulo went surprisingly smoothly. Lucas enrolled at USP and found that, despite having studied at a smaller university, he was very well prepared. Mariana enrolled at the best private school in the region and, despite her shyness, quickly made friends and excelled in class. Isabella gained 2 step-siblings who loved her and always had time to play with her. Conceição began taking private lessons to finish high school and, to everyone's surprise, including her own, discovered that she had an incredible talent for learning. The private tutor Rodrigo had hired was impressed by the dedication and intelligence of her adult student. Conceição has a rare thirst for knowledge. The teacher mentioned this to Rodrigo after the first month of lessons. She learns as if every new piece of information were a treasure, and she makes connections between subjects that demonstrate a very keen mind. Within a few months, Conceição had completed high school. Within a year, she applied to study education at PIAC in Sao Paulo, one of the best private universities in the city. When the results were announced and she learned that she had come in first place, the whole family celebrated as if it were a victory for everyone. But the biggest change took place in Isabella. The shy and fearful girl had become a confident and happy child. She called Lucas and Mariana her siblings, considered Conceição her second mother, and had developed a much closer and more loving relationship with Rodrigo, who was now truly present in her life. One evening, almost a year after Valeria's expulsion, Isabella asked a question that touched Rodrigo's heart deeply. Dad, she said before going to bed, do you think Mama Helena would like our family now? Rodrigo sat down next to his daughter on the bed and thought about his answer. What do you think, my daughter? I think so, Isabella replied with a smile. Because now our house is full of real love. Aunt Conceição takes care of me, just like Mama did. Lucas teaches me math and tells me funny stories from college. Mariana plays with me with dolls and lets me use her lipstick. And you're always there now to say goodnight to me. Rodrigo kissed his daughter on the forehead and felt a sense of happiness he hadn't felt in a long time. I also think Mom and Helena would be very happy if they could see how our family has grown. Dad, Isabella said as her eyes closed with tiredness. Can I call Aunt Conceição Mama Conceição? Rodrigo felt his eyes fill with tears. You can call her whatever you want, sweetheart. She deserves all the affection you can give her. The following year, when Conceição graduated with honors and a commendation in education, Rodrigo organized a graduation party at the villa, to which all the company's employees, Conceição's fellow students, Isabel's friends from school, and even Dona Maria, who had traveled from Tres Corações especially to see her daughter receive her diploma. During the ceremony, Conceição climbed onto the small stage that had been set up in the garden and addressed the guests. 2 years ago, I was a cleaning lady who had lost hope of ever realizing her dreams. I worked to survive, sent money to my children, and thought my life was set in stone forever. But then I met a special girl named Isabella, who reminded me why I always wanted to work with children. And I met a generous man named Rodrigo, who gave me the opportunity to be who I really am. She paused emotionally as the guests applauded. I learned that it's never too late to start over, that every child deserves to be loved and protected, that family is defined not only by blood ties, but by the love and care people have for each other, and that sometimes the greatest blessings in our lives are hidden in difficult moments. Conceição looked at Isabella, who was sitting in the front row next to Rodrigo, Lucas, and Mariana. Isabella, my dear, you taught me that no sacrifice is too great to protect a child. Rodrigo, you showed me that true generosity is not just about giving money, but about providing opportunities. Lucas and Mariana, you have proven to me that I have raised extraordinary children who will change the world. And to all of you who are here today, I thank you for celebrating with me this moment, which represents not only my diploma, but also proof that dreams can come true when we have special people by our side. When the celebration was over and all the guests had left, Rodrigo, Conceição, Isabella, Lucas, and Mariana sat down in the garden, where it had all begun with the sunflower seeds that had now grown into huge flowering plants. Conceição, said Rodrigo, I have one last proposal for you. Conceição, Rio, after everything you've done for me and my family, I don't know what else you could propose to me. I want you to be my partner. Everyone was silent with surprise. What do you mean? Asked Conceição. I want to open a school, a different kind of school, based on the educational principles you use with Isabella. A school where children from all social classes can learn together, where the focus is on both human and academic development, where every child is treated with respect and love. Rodrigo stood up and began pacing through the garden, excited about the idea. I'll contribute the startup capital and you'll contribute your educational expertise. We will create something revolutionary, a school that is truly inclusive, where a child like Isabella can learn alongside children from less affluent families, where it doesn't matter how much money the parents have, but what potential each individual child has. Conceição was visibly moved. Mr. Rodrigo, that would be a dream come true. But I've just graduated. I don't have the experience to be a partner in a business. You have the most important experience. You know how to change a child's life. You proved that with Isabella, with your own children, and with dozens of children you cared for at the Tres Corações Daycare Center. I can teach you business experience. Your gift for educating with love cannot be taught. It is a natural talent. Isabella jumped up from her chair and ran to Conceição to hug her. Say yes, Mother Conceição. That way you can help other children, just as you helped me. Lucas and Mariana looked at each other and smiled. Mother, Lucas said, since we arrived here, you have become the person you always were. Someone who lives to care for others. Accept the offer. We know you'll do a great job. Conceição. She looked at the 4 people who had become her family, took a deep breath, and made a decision that would change not only her life, but also the lives of hundreds of children who would one day attend the school she and Rodrigo would found together. I accept, she said. Let's build this school. 2 years later, the Girasol School opened on a 5,000 Maori plot of land in Vila Madalena. The name was suggested by Isabella, in honor of the first seeds she and Conceição had planted together in the villa's garden. The school had space for 300 students from kindergarten to the high school and operated with an innovative system. 50% of the places were reserved for families who could pay the full school fees, and 50% were scholarships for children from low-income families. Conceição became the educational director and was responsible for training the teachers and developing the curriculum. Rodrigo took care of administration and finances. Isabella was one of the first students to learn alongside children from all socioeconomic backgrounds in classrooms where curiosity to learn and the ability to dream were paramount. Lucas completed his degree in civil engineering and decided to work for Rodrigo's construction company, where he contributed innovative ideas on sustainable construction and inclusive architecture. Mariana passed the entrance exam for medicine at USP and specialized in pediatrics, with the dream of one day treating the children at the school her mother ran. The Girasol School became a benchmark for inclusive education in São Paulo. Conceição gave lectures at universities. She was interviewed on television shows and wrote a book about education with love, which became a bestseller. But she always said that her greatest pride was not the awards the school won, but seeing children like Isabella grow up happy, confident, and ready to make a difference in the world. 5 years after that dramatic afternoon when Rodrigo came home and saw his daughter clinging to the legs of a courageous cleaning lady, he sat in the audience of the school theater and watched Isabella, now 11 years old, play the lead role in the end-of-year play. The shy and frightened girl had become a confident, articulate child full of dreams. At his side, Conceição watched proudly as the girl she considered her daughter shone on stage. She wore an elegant but simple dress, and around her neck a delicate necklace that Rodrigo had given her on the day the school was inaugurated. It wasn't a diamond necklace like the one he had bought for Valeria years before, but it was infinitely more valuable because it symbolized respect, admiration, and genuine gratitude. When the play ended and Isabella ran off the stage to hug her family, Rodrigo looked around and saw Lucas applauding his stepsister proudly. Mariana recorded everything on her cell phone to send to her grandmother in Tres Corações, and Conceição had tears of joy in her eyes. "Conceição," he whispered as Isabella climbed onto her second mother's lap. "Thank you." "For what?" she asked, smiling. "For saving my daughter, for saving my family, for teaching me what is really important in life." Conceição looked at Isabella, who was enthusiastically recounting her performance, then at Lucas and Mariana, who were discussing which restaurant to choose for the celebratory dinner. And finally at Rodrigo, the man who had transformed her life as a cleaning lady into something she had never dared to dream of. "Rodrigo," she said softly, "who saved whom? You gave me a family, a profession, a new life. Isabella gave me a purpose. Lucas and Mariana gave me pride. You all gave me something I had lost long ago. Hope." She paused and smiled. "Actually, I think we saved each other." As the family walked together to the parking lot, laughing and talking about plans for the feast, Rodrigo thought about how much his life had changed since that Thursday afternoon. He had lost a wife he didn't deserve, but he had gained a real family. He had discovered that true wealth lies not in bank accounts or real estate, but in the people we love and who love us back. Isabella held Conceição in Rodrigo's hands and said something that perfectly summed up how they all felt. "I am the happiest girl in the world because I have the most extraordinary family there is." And for the first time in many years, Rodrigo agreed wholeheartedly. They were indeed the most extraordinary family there was. Not because they had money, not because they lived in a beautiful villa, not because they visited elegant places. They were special because they had learned that true love is priceless, that generosity works wonders, and that sometimes the most important people in our lives come to us in unexpected ways, in work clothes and with brooms and cleaning cloths in their hands, but also with the key to happiness that we thought we had lost forever. The story of Rodrigo Almeida and Conceição Santos proves that it is never too late to start over, that every child deserves to be protected and loved, and that the greatest riches in life cannot be measured in money, but in the amount of love we can give and receive. Sometimes the person who will save our whole life is right in front of us, but we must have the humility to look beyond appearances and an open heart to recognize a hero when they disguise themselves as an ordinary person. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to receive more stories that touch the heart and renew our faith in human kindness. Write in the comments which story impressed you the most. and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that there is always hope for a new beginning.